you work with individuals, you work with couples around everything from we'd like a better sex life to we want to try kink to is it weird that I like, this kind of toy or that kind of toy or that I want to watch porn or that I don't. And that must be really satisfying.
It is. It's to me, I feel so lucky that I get to do this work and help people and be a tiny part of their process in exploring a different relationship with sexuality. That feels like such an honor and such a privilege to be let into someone's most intimate moments. And I take it really seriously in helping folks really create and define what pleasure and what sexuality and what connection and what all these experiences mean for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the media plays a role in this, certainly with shows that have come out on Netflix. How to Build a Sex Room, I think, was one of them, which I have not seen yet, but I'm interested in seeing. And of course, Love, Sex, and Goop. And that's given rise to the visibility of people like yourself. And I think that's a really positive thing. Do you see it as something that is contributing to your massive wait list, for example?
Sure. I think it's in the zeitgeist because we're seeing this movement of progression and sexual liberation and also a fight against it. It definitely is in the air more, and people are more curious. They want to know what's being censored. They want to know what they're not supposed to know. And that's one of the kind of hilarious pitfalls of a regressive movement. The more you make something taboo, the more interesting and exciting it is. So
how true,
right?
Yes.
Especially sexually exciting. So yeah, for sure. There are a lot more people who are saying, what's all this conversation about sex about? And what is my own kind of, how does sex play a role in my own life? And how does it play a role in the relationships that I have and the way that I move in the world?
Yeah. How about the role that stigma plays into our sexuality in general, but then specifically around female sexuality? How has that given rise to perhaps the whole profession of sex therapy? And can you imagine a world without it?
Yes, I can imagine a world without it. I hope we get there soon. So the stigma around sexuality is born out of a few different places. There are some theories that say that sexuality gets such a negative rap because it reminds us of our animalistic nature, right? It's a more primitive experience. It reminds us of our mortality in many ways. In fact, terror management theory is a theory that's being studied right now by a few brilliant researchers in a university in Florida who are exploring the way that mortality shapes how we stigmatize sex, especially female sexuality, because there's so much about female sexuality that reminds us of our creatureliness, right? People in female bodies menstruate often than not. And there is a reminder of all things that are very close to life, but also close to death. But the other piece of the stigma is really around the way in which pleasure is policed and controlled and legislated. And there are many decisions about who gets to experience pleasure, especially sexual pleasure, and why they deserve it, in air quotes, and why others perhaps don't in the eyes of these folks who are legislating pleasure.
Yes, I love that. So can you say more about pleasure being legislated?
Absolutely. We are seeing this happen right now before our eyes in 2023 as we're watching our current politicians in America fight around what the reproductive health laws in our country should be and why or why not. So the overlap of religion and politics and sexuality is a story that's as old as the patriarchy, which is many thousand years old. But it definitely serves an important function in a patriarchal society. And by important, I'm not supporting it, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it served a very critical component of developing the stigma around sexuality.
Sure.
Because it has shamed people in female bodies for being sexual it's tried to control the power of sexuality for people in female bodies and the birthing process and the identities. And it's very difficult to control any population if they feel liberated in their own skin. So controlling the bodily autonomy and controlling their sense of self, their conception of self, plays a part in upholding systems of power that have been widely exploited.
Right. And you've said so beautifully, might I add, that sexual liberation is the path to freedom. Do you think that we're going more towards it or further away from freedom?
Well, both, right? So there's this idea called an extinction burst. When we're looking at behavior and when behavior extinguishes or stops existing, there's usually what we call an extinction burst before that. And what that means basically is that the behaviors that are soon to be extinct get bigger and more extreme and more intense.
Yes, exactly. Like it's darkest before the dawn.
Exactly. So as we look at what's happening in this bifurcation of progression and regression in our world right now, and especially on American soil, I think we're seeing the manifestations of the last breaths of patriarchy, the last breaths of racism. You know, we're fighting. We're in a lot of tension. In any system, you're going to see rising voices and rising tensions in the polarities. People fighting for change and people fighting against change.
Right. So ideally, we're almost at our rock bottom.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
I hope so too. So for, couples that have been in very long-term relationships and that are trying to keep that play alive, that excitement alive, that desire alive, but perhaps they have no idea what kink means, or they have never, walked into the pleasure chest, for example. Where do you start with them?
From toddler to adult, we are conditioned in a really vanilla, heteronormative, and heteropatriarchal way around sexuality, regardless of our gender or sexual orientation. There's an emergence, a deconstruction, or an exploration that happens for many people, but not all, if they have more questions about sexuality or their own sexual orientation. But for a lot of folks who do identify in a heteronormative way, there's a path into relationship that is quite compulsory and quite unconscious for most people.
Yeah.
Right? Like exploring kink is a way that many people can start to think about the messages that they've inherited with regard to sex and relationships and power and shame and liberation and freedom. I mean, kink is a fantastic playground to play with different kinds of emotional experiences and different parts of your identity that you've not explored before in a safe and consensual way. So kink is a really cool place for a lot of couples who want to deepen their connection, because a lot of folks think that kink is about sex, but it's actually about intimacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would it look like? How would you actually define it? Someone has no idea what it is and says, I'm interested in kink. Dr. Kate, what is it?
Kink is any kind of sexually or erotically charged thought or activity that is non-normative. That's really all it means. So non-vanilla. And that can mean so many things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's go through a couple of examples.
Sure.
Would that be, I'm tying my partner up.
Sure.
And while doing that, I'm going to dress him up in a feather boa because I want to, and I want to see him in a feather boa.
Absolutely. That can be a form of kink. That's a sort of a kink light, maybe. I think like some elements of bondage or spanking and things like that have made their way into more mainstream conversations around sex.
Yeah.
But definitely that's a part of it. That's bondage. That's a little bit of sensation play. And when we look at the continuum of kind of kink experiences, we're kind of starting with an egalitarian partnership that's really geared around exchanging different sensations and feelings, and it's very equal. Very little interaction around power exchange. But as we get down that spectrum, that continuum of kink, then the relationship with power exchange or authority exchange becomes bigger and a bigger part of the scene that any partnership or two partners, three partners, however many partners are there, would employ.
you mentioned munches when we spoke prior to this conversation. And I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about munches and what they are. And I just love the name munches.
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
Yeah. So a munch is a kink-friendly community gathering. So usually folks who identify as kinky or who are curious about what it means to be kinky will go. It's a non-sexual experience.
Yeah.
It is strictly for community building and education sharing.
Okay.
So folks can go and not be worried that they're going to be bombarded with all kinds of sexual invitations or experiences. It's a way to just go and talk to other people who are interested in things and learn more about what lights you up and what could be out there and what's a possibility. And it's also a great place to get a kinky mentor so that you can learn more about getting from where you are into where you want to be ethically, safely, and with the consideration of all parties involved.
How interesting. I love that. In my mind, I'm thinking it's like a buffet that you are window shopping. You're window shopping a buffet.
I think about it kind of like a book fair.
Okay, I like
right?
that. You're
But
not reading the whole book.
But with people, right? And you get to go and learn
Yes.
from other people's experiences and their collective wisdom.
Okay, so a mentor, for example, if I'm at a munch and I'm like, I'm looking for a mentor, you know, is it like they've got a badge on them? How do I know?
I don't think it's that formal. No, it's really about just kind of talking to people and asking questions. And sometimes people will volunteer to help folks in the space. Sometimes they might say, oh, I know a person who's a dom and she's accepting apprentices, so let me make a connection for you.
Right.
You know, the community element of kink is so important. I mean, it for many people is part of their sexual orientation and part of their identity. A munch is usually a grassroots kind of organization by kinky folks in the community. So most communities have some iteration of them, especially the larger communities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if one is interested, they can just kind of Google munch near me.
Yeah.
Honey, this week we're not going to have brunch. We're going to do a munch. And I'm not going to tell you what it is until we get there.
I mean, the enthusiasm would be high. Maybe the terror too for
think
some
it'd be
people.
What I want to segue to is around desire. And something that we talk about with the physicians on the show is actually the female orgasm. And so we're talking about the different practices that can heighten that, like the Amsella, through strengthening the pelvic floor, or with the O-shot, really bringing that, you know, to a very heightened experience. I want to ask you about the psychological side. So I'm aware of people who are not able to have not ever had an orgasm. And yet, if they went and saw an OBGYN, the OBGYN would say, you're fine, go see a therapist.
See a sex therapist.
And so what do you do? What do you do in that? How do you make it happen? Yeah. How do you make it happen for them? First of all, it's a lot of pressure.
Well, exactly, right. You can't make it happen. That's like the opposite strategy. Because when we're sitting there like trying so hard, it's the equivalent of watching paint dry. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's an exploration, and it really depends on kind of what's going on for someone and why they might be having a hard time. For some people, it's a lack of education about their bodies and about pleasure in general. For some folks, it's permission, right? If they haven't given themselves permission to center their own pleasure, it's going to be a lot more challenging to experience pleasure, to notice pleasure, and to really cultivate pleasure.
Right.
For some people, they're partnered with somebody who does not have great skills, and they may not know how to communicate what they need, right? Because we have such little and such poor sex education in this country, a lot of folks find themselves partnered or married, and they don't really know how to have these conversations.
Sure.
So they're just kind of fumbling with each other and hoping for the best, right?
Yes. And yet there's so many resources out there. There's so many sex therapists out there. Can you talk about the difference between a sexologist and a sex therapist?
Yeah, sex therapist is a licensed mental health provider.
Okay.
They can be psychologists, they can be counselors, they can be LMFTs, but they really have a focus on the integrative component of mental health and sexuality. A sex educator has really great understanding about sex education, pleasure, things of that nature. A sexologist is sort of like a sex educator on steroids, right? They've had
Okay.
more education. They're usually doctoral level folks who have a doctorate in clinical sexology or in human sexuality. So
Oh.
they have more education about sex education and about all things related to sexuality in general.
You're the founder of Modern Intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Yeah, it's a group practice, and we work with individuals, couples around healing from trauma, getting containment around addictions of all sorts, and primarily around sexuality. So all things related to individual or partner-based sexuality, healing from sexual trauma, addressing sexual desire discrepancies, having a healthy relationship with porn and erotic material.
Sure.
We do a lot with people around helping to deconstruct some of the shame or oppressions that they've been internalizing that impede their pleasure.
Okay.
So, yeah, we do a lot all around.
So if I wanted a sex therapist, I would just go to modernintimacy.com.
Yeah.
And I can look at your different providers and I can see who has availability.
Absolutely.
And are these telehealth?
Yes, so we are a fully telehealth-based practice.
Okay.
But you know what's great is that even for folks who aren't in the areas where we have licensed providers, we have two amazing trained coaches on our staff. One is a somatic sex coach, and one is actually a psychologist.
For those who don't know what a somatic sex coach is, how is that different than a sex therapist?
Yeah, a somatic sex coach has extra training to understand the way that our somatic experience, so the experience we have in our soma or in our body,
Yeah.
contributes to things like pleasure, but also contributes to things that inhibit pleasure
Okay.
and get in the way of our pleasure. So our somatic sex coach does a lot of work with folks around embodiment practices and helping them feel more in
Yeah.
their body, which, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
increases pleasure and can help people have a really exciting sex life.
Oh, that's so exciting. I love that.
When people want to work with somebody who has these kinds of specializations, it can be quite pricey.
Sure.
And we do not work with insurance companies.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
Yeah.
So what I've done with our externship program is created a space where people can get the opportunity to work with people who are more specialized at
Yeah.
low or no cost rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Low or no cost.
Yes.
This could be free.
If they work with our students, it can be free. Yes.
That's exciting.
It is. And our students get such rigorous training. They are all supervised by me and other people on the team.
Okay.
So they are not walking in without skills.
Yeah.
They have constant trainings that they get through our team and elsewhere. And I think it's a great match for folks who are looking for something that's more reasonably cost.
That's very smart and very admirable.
Thank you.
It's exciting. Let's talk about the patriarchy.
Let's smash the patriarchy.
Let's have some fun, shall we?
Yeah.
I loved something that you said, and I've told you that so many things that you say, I want to knit on pillows. And when we spoke on the phone, I just said, my God, I'm going to have a room full of pillows with things that you say because you articulate them so beautifully and so succinctly. And one of the things that stuck with me is you said, and I may get it a little bit wrong, but basically that patriarchy is one of the most tolerated forms of oppression.
Yes.
And that is because it is a form of essentialism.
Patriarchy stands as strong as it does because it mandates gender essentialism, or another way to think about that is it mandates a gender binary, and it also, gender essentialism is the belief that we are so inherently different because of our gender,
Right.
and that our gender is tied to the sex that we are assigned at birth.
Okay.
Right? So we are so much more alike than these gender binaries would allow us to believe. So a big part of deconstructing patriarchy is understanding gender as a construct and also giving ourselves permission to live outside of these really narrow and rigid expectations of who we should be
Right.
based on the genitals that we have.
Yes. Oh my God. Amen to that. Yes. Just yes. The Barbie movie made
so
me
good.
cry
Yeah.
so much, where it felt like water was just falling out of my face. And I think that's because so much was said, and a final monologue America Ferrara delivers so beautifully. Oh my God. Because it doesn't wrap it up in this, beautiful bow, right? It doesn't wrap patriarchy in this pretty little box and go, here it is, just deal with it.
Yeah.
It shows so many different layers. And one of the things that I loved too was that when Ken comes to the real world that men and horses are running, as opposed to Barbie's world, where females are autonomous and males are dependent on them for their validation. How can we shift more towards the Barbie world where we are validating ourselves and that we're not so dependent on that male validation?
Well, I think one of the things that the Barbie movie did so well was to highlight the ridiculousness of a lopsided system when it comes to equality. So when we look at the way that masculinity is often understood in today's world, it's what Barbie did so beautifully is highlight masculinity without showing the aggression that often is attributed to masculinity.
Right,
in the Barbie world. And so
yes.
When you kind of strip away the aggression and the violence, you get to see how a patriarchy, now the Barbie movie was not a matriarchy. It was a flip of patriarchy.
Yes, exactly.
Without the violence that women are subjected to so often.
Yes.
So they did such a great job of highlighting these imbalances. And I think that we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
And part of the reason a lot of men are so salty about it is because they have to sit with the realization that that's not cool. And the angrier they are, the closer they actually are to feminism. So I am all for men getting angry.
Right? Okay. Why do you say that? Let's get some clarification on that.
Yeah, they don't like how men were treated in Barbie Land. And it's good. I'm glad you don't like how they were treated in Barbie Land. Now pepper in tremendous loads of violence and assault and limitation all the time. And now you know what it's like to be women. And so if you're angry about how the Kens were treated in Barbie Land, you should be signing up to learn about feminism.
Absolutely. And I haven't heard this, that men were concerned about how they were treated in Barbie Land, because to me it seems like, hey, what a great gig. I get to hang out with all of these fabulous women.
Right.
And, if they look at me and they say hello, it's my lucky day.
Yeah.
But to me, that seemed like, they got treated very well. It was, Ken wasn't really invited to spend the night because Barbie just wanted to just
do her own thing.
And I loved how she was like, what would we do?
Yeah.
It was such a simple thing. Like a request, and then so audacious to see a polite request be denied.
Politely, but accepted.
Yes, and accepted.
Yeah.
How true. So what was wrong with it? What didn't they like?
Well, what I think they don't like is that men did not hold the power, right? See,
They looked great on the dance floor.
They did. They did. The thing, so many men are not really aware of how much power they hold. And there's an author, Avram Weiss, who wrote this incredible book called Hidden in Plain Sight, The Way Men's Fears About Women Shape Their Intimate Relationships. I think anybody who loves men, dates men, and is in relationship with men should read this book. It's beautiful. And what he says in the book is that, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something along the lines of, one of the biggest travesties of masculinity is that men hold all the power while feeling like they hold none of it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the piece that got highlighted in Barbie Land, because the men didn't have any power. And so it kind of showcased their vulnerability because they didn't have all of that compensatory aggression and dominance the way they do in the patriarchy. I sort of see the Kens in Barbie Land very similar to the Kens in the patriarchy, except the Kens in Barbie Land just don't have all of that dominance that they're using to demonstrate that they still want validation from women, right? That's a patriarchal thing. They want the power because they want validation. They want to own. They want to be free of rejection, right? And in a
Yeah.
world that's based on
So true.
equality, guess what? Rejection is a likelier conversation unless you're really working hard to be an interesting, a better, and a kinder and a more reciprocal person. It's
Right.
not a given.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I loved the part where he's just like, I am enough.
Ken went on a beautiful journey.
He did.
He did. And he got where I hope most people can get, which
Yeah.
is I don't need external validation. I am enough. And
Yeah.
when we live in a society where everybody feels that way, ooh,
Yeah.
so much better.
Definitely.
So much better.
I was in Connecticut with my sister last weekend, and I was at a store, and we were trying on clothes at this store. And a woman came out of the dressing room, and she had on this dress. And I said, "That looks so great on you." She was looking in the mirror. She didn't even glance at me, and she just said, "I know."
Yes. I love that
And
for
I
her.
was like, "Oh my God."
yes.
Let me just take this in completely. And I did. I really took it in and was like, I love that just happened. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
This woman was about 65 and so completely embodied, so completely empowered. Just wow on that.
Good.
So those kinds of things give me hope.
Yeah. Well, I think what the practice for women and femme folks is to really think about how much of their own experience in life centers men. And
Yes.
when we grow up in a patriarchal society, we can love men without centering them, by the way. Although
Okay.
they may have big feelings being
I
decentered.
think they might have big feelings about that.
No doubt, because many men have been conditioned to believe that they are head of household and that they should be centered in everything. The world was
Yeah.
designed by men for men
Yeah.
in our patriarchal society. I mean, everything down to healthcare systems, the way that our cars are built. Cars were not designed for the female body. They were designed with men's bodies in mind. So everything about how our modern world is designed is by men for men.
Yeah.
So of course, we're skewed to center men in everything. But when folks start to decenter men, they have a really different relationship with their own bodies, with the men in their lives, with the women in their lives, with other folks who are non-binary.
Yeah.
There's a lot more openness and freedom and peace internally
Yeah.
for folks who do choose to go down this path. It also comes with some grief and a lot of anger because
Right.
when you start to deconstruct patriarchy, you really realize how much you've lost living in that framework. So, and that's true of people of all genders, right? There is a tremendous amount of grief, which is another reason why I think people rally so hard to preserve it.
So if you're in kind of, let's say, an oppressed marriage and you get out of it, and then you all of a sudden you feel this rush of freedom, you're taking up the whole bed, you're sleeping whoever you want to sleep with, you're hanging from the chandelier, you're doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
Are you saying that then there's like this crash into grief?
Sometimes the grief comes first.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes after that.
Yeah.
Everyone's path is a little bit different. But yeah, I think there is a tremendous amount of grief because
Yeah.
it's not just romantic relationships. A lot of women are looking at the relationships they have with their brothers, with their male friends, with their fathers, with their uncles, with their grandfathers, and really looking at the missed opportunities for connection because of these rigid systems that have existed.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's
The
even
missed opportunities for connection.
yeah.
So what would it look like if you are, let's say I'm in a scenario with my partner where it's centering around him. What would be an example of an act of any kind of shift where I'm not?
Oh, I love this question so much. Well, one thing that I want to make sure to say is that every relationship is different, and in some relationships, it's not safe to
Understood.
change things like that. Because
Okay, assuming it's safe.
assuming it's safe.
Let's
yeah.
assume it's safe.
I think the first thing to do, in my opinion, is to start looking at the emotional labor that is asked of you in that relationship and to stop doing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just wow on that. See, in my mind, I was going to a doing place, just like a task, right? Something that I could almost check off.
Yeah.
And when you say emotional labor, like that, I have a visceral reaction to that. Like, oh my God, I've done so much of that.
Yeah. So much.
Yeah. Like it's almost like this wave of recognition / exhaustion / wow, it would be okay for me to sit on the couch for a week and just watch The Price is Right, like on a loop.
Yeah. And not apologize for it and not manage the feelings that your partner has about it.
Yeah.
And not try to contort yourself into some expectation of you, right? Because all of that requires emotional labor.
Yeah.
When you're asked to smile and you don't feel like smiling, that's emotional labor because now you have to decide, am I going to smile and appease this person to avoid conflict, maybe even violence, or am I just going to go about my day and ignore that?
Yeah.
Right? That's emotional labor, and it's being extracted from women and marginalized communities every single day, especially with dual identities. So if somebody is in a racial or ethnic minority and they're also a woman, the amount of emotional labor is exponentially higher.
Wow.
And so stop doing it, right? Give yourself permission to stop managing the feelings of other people and to only think about your own emotional processes for a period of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That feels like a big ask.
It is.
Because you really have to be conscious and aware of your thoughts and emotions, which I think a lot of the times we don't want to.
We don't want to. And because we know that on the other side of that awareness is grief and is a shift that's required. Because once you ring the bell, you can't unring it. Once you see all of this stuff, you can't unsee it.
So true.
That now we're faced with decisions, right? If our partner's not going to meet us in this evolution, then you have to decide if you're going to be in a partnership with somebody who's not willing to evolve in that way, or do you end it? That's a really painful decision.
Most definitely. And then it poses all sorts of massive life changes that obviously then affect other people, be it your children, be it your parents, your coworkers, et cetera, et cetera.
Sometimes positively, it can affect them too.
Of course. Yeah. Of course, but still affecting people.
Yeah.
And having that responsibility on you.
All that emotional labor.
A lot of emotional labor.
Yeah.
I mean, just wow. With Dr. DeLucia the other day, we were talking about how amazing it is that we don't have a protocol or a mandate for postpartum for the physical body. Yes. Because actually the vagina goes through a big trauma. Obviously a massive expansion. And even if you have a cesarean, your body goes through a massive shift. And the fact that we're just kind of expected to hop to.
I was just speaking with a woman who wrote a new book called Birth Control.
Yeah.
The rest of the book's title is escaping me, but it's essentially about how men have overtaken the process of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.
Yes.
And we were talking about this very thing, right? The process of giving birth is such an emotionally sterile experience for a lot of people who do that in the hospital, which the majority of births do happen in a hospital. And it's very much a perfunctory, you're here, you're dilated, let's do this, we're going to do that, let's teach you to latch. And of course, that's really helpful, practical information.
Yes.
But then there's very little processing of what's just happened. And it is a trauma. It is a trauma to the body to have this experience.
Yeah.
And it's also an absolute departure from who you were to who you are going to be emotionally and from an identity perspective.
So true.
Very little happens around that conversation.
Like nothing happens around that conversation.
Right.
Usually, I think it's nothing. It's amazing. That's amazing to me. So when we were talking about the patriarchy, I was thinking, how does that whole system affect the female body sexuality? So if you're in a female body, your sexuality, how does that translate?
So first, no group of people are a monolith, right? So it can affect people in a lot of different ways. But for folks born in female bodies, there are often so many experiences of objectification, sexual objectification and emotional objectification. There are a lot of entitlements put on your body and on your time and attention in order to soothe the expectations of men.
Do you mean like putting on makeup?
Yeah.
Even?
Yeah.
Right.
Putting on makeup, dressing for the male gaze, but also entitlements to your body for pleasure, right? And in the form of, let me look at you. You're beautiful. That's pleasing to me.
Yeah.
But also in the expectation of pleasure being given to men.
Yeah.
There are the ways that men and women are socialized around their sexuality and around pleasure specifically. Many people in female bodies are socialized to not even experience pleasure unless it is in service of a partner's pleasure or comes secondary to a partner's pleasure. So a lot of folks who are in female bodies don't really know what it's like to center their own pleasure. And so they struggle with things like having an orgasm. The double standards around pleasure for people in female bodies exist. So male partners often don't prioritize the pleasure of female partners. So the orgasm gap is big, it's loud, it's frustrating. And there's a lot of expectation that women should be available for sex, but not really prioritize their own pleasure in it.
Exactly. And not speak up about what they want because they might not even know what they want.
Right.
Which makes me think about one of the courses that's on your website, which is about, I believe it's called How to Discern Porn, How to Look at Porn, Ethical Porn.
That workshop is called Why Women Should Care About Porn.
Why Women Should Care About Porn. I liked the title because it does beg the question, why should we?
Right. For so many reasons. Porn has been around since humans have been around, right, in some iteration. Porn exists in lots of different mediums. So there's, of course, video, there's written, there's audio porn, there's even sculpture and art and lots of different mediums where erotica exists.
Absolutely.
When we think of porn, we often think about the free porn that's on the hub that is definitely made by men most of the time and geared toward the desires and wants and perspectives of men in the male gaze.
Yeah.
So a lot of women have a hard time accessing erotica through those vehicles, understandably.
Right.
But there are so many other kinds of erotic material that can bring out different interests in women that women find more palatable, that present different body shapes and different ethnic backgrounds in a non-fetishized way. We teach a lot around porn literacy, and then we help women understand what do these things mean to them and how does it make sense within their own sexuality? How do they feel about whether or not their partner watches porn and consumes it? What kinds of boundaries and fidelity agreements do they want to make around it?
Yeah.
And how do they communicate that so that they really can feel empowered and not like this is something that only men do, only men experience, and therefore they can't have anything to say about it.
Right. I was at a point where I was researching porn for women, and I realized I had the thought that I was scared to even Google that term, porn for women. And the thought went to this place of, what if the police come and take my children? Kind of a thing. Like what, is it wrong? And of course, in the moment I'm like, that's a ridiculous thought. But I was aware of it just in terms of, wow, that dichotomy, right? Like this is for them. This is not for me. If I go over here, I'm going to get punished.
Yeah.
And then of course, out of that, I found Erica Lust, an amazing Swedish adult filmmaker who has a whole website. I think it's X Confessions, and has so many different things that are fantastic for exploration, in my experience at least, because it did bring up like, oh, is that fun to see, right? These 2 body shapes or these 4 body shapes, whatever. This, a mix of whatever you want. And yet it was free from any violence, free from anything that would make me afraid to Google that topic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a big fan and supporter of ethically produced porn and feminist produced porn for those reasons, right? The actors are paid equitably.
Right.
They are paid. They're there consensually. they get to say no to whatever they don't want to do.
Right.
As opposed to some of more of the like the mainstream porn production companies. There are sometimes questions about how the porn is produced. Are people really there volitionally?
Yeah.
And can they leave and say no to different things? So having that shift in and of itself can be liberating and can open up a lot more space for things that are exciting in the bedroom.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, I think that's an interesting course. And then one that I really love the title of, that I believe that is happening on September 19th, is Righteous Rage.
Yes.
What a great title.
Thank you.
It just makes me want to like run naked on the beach. It just sounds awesome. It really sounds awesome. Tell me how awesome it is.
I mean, I'm biased, but I love it. I'm co-facilitating that course. It's a 6-week workshop. I'm co-facilitating it with Rachel Overval, who is the somatic sex coach on my team. And Rachel has a book called Finding Feminism. So she left a very high control religion and found a liberated relationship with herself, with sexuality, and with the world.
Yeah.
So I'm really thrilled to work on this workshop with her. It's a 6-week workshop, and we are going to help women and femme-identifying folks deconstruct patriarchy and understand the influence that it's had in their relationship with desire and sexuality and relationships and boundaries, and process the anger and the grief that comes up with that.
Yeah.
Because the thing about anger that I think a lot of people misunderstand is that it's a really useful emotion.
Right.
And when we step into a constructive relationship with our anger, it's galvanizing. It helps us step into self-advocacy and other advocacy.
Yeah.
And it helps us find a source of restitution when it comes to the power imbalances that are often included with different systems of oppression.
Yes.
Not often, always included in different systems of oppression. So this course, this workshop, is a way for folks to have an embodied expression of that rage, coupled with education about what's going on and how it's influenced them. So each week, we will do a little bit of background and education, a lot of conversation, and some embodied practices to help move that anger or grief or whatever other feelings are in our bodies through, so
Most
we can
definitely
feel good again.
I love that. I had a yoga teacher who would always say the issues are in our tissues.
I love that.
Miss Nikki Myers. Shout out to her. So for this course, this is virtual?
It is. It's virtual, so people anywhere in the world can participate.
Okay.
And we'll be hosting it ongoing, but the first section is starting September 19th, and it's 6 weeks long, an hour and a half each week.
In the evening, in the daytime,
In the
Pacific hours? What are we looking at?
6 to 7:30 Pacific on
Oh,
Tuesdays.
very doable. Very doable.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Well, I hope you join us.
Thank you.
It'd be great.
I love anything with rage in the title. I feel like rage has like a positive connotation as opposed to anger, which feels like it has a negative connotation. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Women historically have been conditioned away from their anger and their rage.
Yeah.
But I had a supervisor once say something so profound about rage. She said, rage is not really about anger. Rage is about panic, right? And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh.
Right? Because rage is often this frenetic expression of anger, but it's also desperate. It's like something is off and I have to fix it right now and it can't wait. And so, boom, here comes my rage.
Interesting. I think of it as like an event that can be scheduled.
I mean, it can be.
Yeah.
It can be when it's constructively identified and used.
Yeah.
But when we're not in touch with it, it does leak out in these reactive and unpredictable ways.
Yes, I see what you're saying. I like to think of it like as a calendar. You know, it's in my calendar at like 4:35 as like a rage moment.
Yeah. You're just going to go scream into the void and let it out for a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Love that.
And just harnessing it. I think it's about the release of energy.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, as a little kid, I would always ask my mom when we were in the car if I could scream out the window. And she'd go, honey, you need to wait till we're on the highway. So I'd be like, okay.
I love that.
And then we got on the highway, rolled down the window, and just screamed. That was it. But it felt so fun.
Yeah.
It felt so freeing.
Well, what a discharge, right?
Right.
Yeah. Our nervous systems store a lot of like cathectic energy. And so I love that you had this way to release that and move it through you and out of you.
Definitely. I actually had this whole thing I did at the 1-year anniversary after my divorce. And I was living in New Zealand at the time, but I took a few days and I went to Australia. I went to Byron Bay, which was so beautiful.
Love it.
And I had some beautiful, I think it was really grief that was being released through like happy rage, maybe righteous rage, but it was happy. It was good. It was a lot, but it was great.
I bet you felt a lot more free and a lot lighter after that.
I did. And I did it so there would be a ritual around something. And I think that's something that we are missing in our culture is the ritualization of processing our emotions.
Yeah.
So like we talked about with childbirth, okay, you've got the ritual around the physical stuff and even the cultural stuff like a baby shower, for instance. Right. But what about the emotional rituals? Don't you find that we're missing those?
100%. Yeah. And I think it plays a huge role in the ways that couples rebound together. I think it plays a big role in the way that postpartum depression manifests.
Right.
The lack of resources that are available consistently for new parents. I mean, all of that together, it really lacks a lot of cohesive intentionality. And the emotional processing piece is really big because without effective emotional processing, a lot of people really struggle to feel like themselves again.
Sure.
Because there's this new piece that hasn't been fully integrated into their experience. So it kind of like feels like a discombobulated or fragmented carrying of oneself into this new world with this new version that hasn't fully met itself.
Like a sidecar that you're just not even acknowledging.
Yeah.
But it's like this heavy thing. Oh, it's such a burden.
It can be.
Right?
Yeah.
Like just get rid of that.
Well, process
get rid of it.
I think one of the things that's really unique about what you're saying and the lack of emotional integration after childbirth is that a lot of women don't really know what to expect. And while we share a lot of information about pregnancy and about birth and about being a parent, I think a piece that's lacking is the who are you? And it's getting better. More women are sharing that conversation together. But I think there's a lot of rage because there's still a lot about pregnancy, birth, and mothering that is not discussed proactively.
So true.
And right? And so then a lot of women are like, what the actual, right?
Absolutely.
How come no one told me about this or that or this?
Most definitely. Yeah. And I think that's true too for the aging process around women's sexual health.
Yes.
And this stuff that's not talked about, like, that's been noted in the New York Times articles, like half the world has a clitoris. Why don't we know anything about it? And why have we been misled about menopause? That was another excellent article. But what I'm thinking about now is around these rituals and then actually the physical manifestations of that state or ritual. And so the example is, I'm engaged, therefore I have an engagement ring. Well, what if I've just experienced some incredible shift in my body? Like it's the first time that I've had like 19 orgasms in a row by myself and I'm just fully embodied and I just took a whole day and celebrated it. I feel like we should have like a physical manifestation of that. Like, let's go buy jewelry after that.
I am with you.
Right?
Yes.
Like, let's go buy some big rocks.
Yes. Celebrating that pleasure, in my opinion, is such a key component to experiencing more.
I do think we need more things, and whether it be a small thing, like a lip gloss, or a big thing, like a giant diamond, things that we do for ourselves.
No, it is. It is about celebrating pleasure, experiencing more, celebrating that, experiencing more. We have to tie some positive motivations to this because so many women have been so conditioned to hold back their pleasure, to deprioritize their pleasure, to have to earn it, right, through the experience of other people's pleasure, or the aesthetic presentation that they adorn. So, there's so many limitations to pleasure, peace, comfort, and power that when we lean into it, I love this idea of ritualizing it. And many folks in the sex therapy and sex educational space, sexual wellness space, are really verbal about developing an intentional pleasure practice. And this is a great place to start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like those kinds of things should exist like book clubs, right? Where instead of we're talking about this book, which is fine, but we're talking about pleasure and what we found pleasurable. And then I would add the layer of what we have acquired to symbolize it. And that would just be for the purpose so we can remember something.
Yeah. I might say what we've acquired to symbolize it is a really beautiful abstract way. I might say we can separate it from consumerism a little bit too.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like
it could be a piece of string around your wrist.
Yeah. Or an emotional state, or access to a part of ourselves that maybe we didn't know before, right?
Yeah.
How powerful is it to have 19 orgasms in a day?
Very.
I mean, so powerful, right? Can what you've acquired be the power and some really like celebration of that power within your own body,
right,
and within your own abilities to bring yourself to pleasure?
Yeah, I think the thing that I want from it is the tattoo, right? Like I got the T-shirt, and that's because I think we can forget easily how great we are.
Yeah.
And how amazing we are.
Yeah, so true.
And how capable we are of these incredible things, be it being a caring person, being an incredible sex therapist, birthing a child, whatever it is, or having 19 orgasms in a day, or, dressing up in a feather boa and going to the sex party, whatever it is. I think it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
Because then we come back into our regular world, and then there it is again, and it kind of shoves us back down. That's the reason for the thing, the thing that reminds you, so you heard it here first. I feel like there's going to be some line of things. I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, people can get something that reminds them of pleasure,
right? Like AA, you get it like a chip.
Yeah,
you get your chip and you hold on to that chip. Like there's a something.
Yeah.
I want the something.
What would yours be? If not a big diamond, what would it be?
If not a big diamond, I like the idea of something that you see and something that's on the body. So just off the cuff, I would probably say it's something around your wrist, and then you'd add things to it. So let's say you'd add a bead to it, and the beads could symbolize different things. And so a bit of, kind of like a modern day charm bracelet, but I kind of see it as, something that's just there. It's not too, it could also be a necklace, something that's just on there that you feel it, you see it,
Yeah. The idea of something tactile feels really interesting and important because there is an embodiment that comes with that. And if you pair the object that you're holding, for example, or that you're wearing, it can remind you to be in your body too. With
Absolutely.
pleasure.
And it's effective. If we look at religion, right? Prayer beads, like even, in Buddhism, they use things, right? The cross, like the big Buddha, whatever it is, there are things that are there to remind you for a reason.
So true.
So I like the thing that represents pleasure and your commitment to pleasure.
Yeah.
And then these, I made it to this point, but then they're self-proclaimed, right? They're self-identified. It's not like it's not it doesn't have to be 19 orgasms, right?
Yeah.
It can be
one. It can be just enjoying a new sensation on your skin.
Yes.
Right? With no orgasm attached.
Absolutely. Okay, rest. Rest. So now that we've gone to pleasure, let's go to rest. You said something so beautiful about rest.
When we were talking before this conversation, I mentioned that when I'm teaching or working with students or externs or trainees in my practice, one of the things that I say to them all the time is that self-care and rest are not luxuries. They are an ethical mandate in our line of work.
Yes, ethical mandate. I like it. I like ethical mandate.
Well, I think it does. I think it doesn't. It's not limited to therapists, right?
Yeah.
We really do need to consider rest a productive activity.
Right.
Right. We're so tied to being productive and achieving things and doing.
Yeah.
That we burn ourselves out.
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, and spiritually and relationally, right? So rest is a step toward being more productive because we have to recharge in order to give. So I really hope people learn that they don't have to earn rest.
Yeah.
Rest is a given.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we do that one?
By saying no more. Yeah.
I also think we should reward ourselves for that.
The rest is the reward.
I guess so.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. I'm thinking of just the Pavlovian thing. So it's like, rest. Ooh, you get a Cheerio. Just something little.
Well, rest.
Just something little.
Rest. You get a vacation. You get to go to the pool. You get to watch your favorite show.
I like that.
You get to read a book that you've been putting off for a while. Like the carrot is there. It's inherent in the rest, in the play.
And here's a question. This is something I wrote down actually to ask you was, do you consider intimacy, and specifically physical intimacy, so I'll just say sex, a form of rest?
It can be.
I think so too.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it's recharging for many people.
Yes.
Right? So is it a form of rest or play, or is there play in the rest? Maybe it's all of the above, depending on the kinds of sex that you like and how much effort it requires.
Sure.
I'm sure many people have had lazy sex, which is part of my favorite sex to have.
Yeah.
Right? Where you don't have to exert too much energy or thought. You're just there with yourself or with a partner.
Yeah.
So it can be rest. And certainly the neurochemicals that it engenders in our body can help with so much rest.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What's more relaxing?
I mean, the oxytocin that comes with having an orgasm or skin-to-skin contact literally obliterates cortisol in the body. So it can help people sleep. It can help people rest. And it is definitely something to do more of if you're looking for that kind of deep somatic recharge and relaxation.
Yeah. And it's chemically proven.
Mm-hmm. Probably the number one question that I get asked in some way, shape, or form is, am I normal?
Yes.
Is what I like okay and normal?
Right.
And the thing about normal, I'm using that word in air quotes, is that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Human beings are incredibly diverse. So it goes without saying that so would be our sexual interests.
Sure.
So even though some things may be less common, less commonly liked and sought out, it doesn't make them unhealthy. Right? Pain and pleasure are so intimately linked together and so overcoupled in the way that our body experiences things. We almost need to know what pain feels like to experience pleasure.
Exactly.
So for some people, it's a little bit closer, right? They need the pain to feel pleasure in the moment. Yeah. And so it can be really healthy, even if from the outside looking in, you're like, you know what, that's not my jam. And not every fantasy needs to happen in real life, right?
Ooh, yes.
A lot of people think if I want this or if I fantasize about it, it must mean that I want this in reality.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. I think that is an important distinction to note because so much can actually be satisfying through just fantasy.
Yeah.
All right. So again, sex therapists are readily available. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to work with you, take one of your courses, work with one of your people in your whole organization, modernintimacy.com. Is that the best way to find you?
Absolutely. Modernintimacy.com is the best place to start. Okay. And even if you're living outside of where we practice therapeutically, our team is really great at helping you find providers near you. So
great.
It can be a one-stop shop if you want to, get started.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope people give themselves permission to seek professional guidance because in my experience of talking with a lot of people before taking on this show, it's a lot of people suffer in silence.
They do.
And a lot of people think something's wrong with them.
Right. And I want to highlight nothing has to be wrong in order to work with a sex therapist.
Sure.
Many people come to sex therapy because they want to think more expansively about sexuality and they don't know where to start. So working with a sex therapist can be to resolve something that you think is not quite the way you want it to be or doesn't feel good or doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
but it also can be a place to go with curiosity about how to be more curious in your sex life and set yourself up for sexual play that feels really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. I think it's exciting to know that there are so many options out there that we don't typically think about because we keep ourselves in this place of, I don't deserve it. It might be weird. I don't have permission. And I am hopeful that this show, from learning about all of the options out there, can make life better for people.
I hope so too.
So it's more fun and it's more pleasure. And speaking of which, I have a gift for you.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
It is a huge pussy tote
Thank you.
with the correct definition
This
of pussy,
is fantastic.
which is otherworldly, orgasmic, resilient, flexible, life-giving humanity vessel, as one already knows.
Yes.
And
A huge pussy holds the future. This is brilliant.
thank you. The scarf inside it is mine. I do that so it just kind of is filled out a little bit more.
Give it back. I
So
promise.
I just mentioned that. Like, oh, I also like that scarf.
I know. Well, thank you.
Oh, it's so cute.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
That is something that I think is important to normalize, is also language, what we give meaning to. And that's so much of what we've been talking about today
Yeah.
is the meaning we give to things, whether it's a munch or whether it's nipple clamps or whether it's that partner in a boa. It's the meaning you give to it. And there's a lot to be said for giving oneself permission to experience more pleasure in their lives. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And I think you're going to see me at that Rage class.
I mean, I hope so.
I will
hope
be
so.
screaming.
And
It'll be loud.
thank you for doing this series, right? This is such an important series, and I feel so grateful to have been a part of it. So thank you.